Hey, what's up, y'all? Here we go with video number 8, I think this is. This one's called Human Bioelectricity Part 2. That was one of my most popular videos. So I want to thank everyone, and it was the first of my instructional videos. So now that I've added in some colors here and there and some more puzzle pieces, we're going to do a new updated one, Human Bioelectricity Part 2. And this one is called Animal Magnetism, Orgone, and the redirection of human vital energy, let's call it. Okay? So, first part. We already discussed how many structures in the body have an electrostatic capacity. You know, they can be described in electrostatics because of the currents that are flowing. I'll give a few more examples, and these are probably even better examples than the one I already gave. But you take the nervous system, right? So the nervous system conducts electrical impulses. And in a way, it's covered in these myelin sheaths, right? And so these things are like mini insulators, but there's like a chain of them. So what you get is what's called saltatory conduction, which is where it jumps over the insulators one little hop at a time. So that's one example. Now I'm going to go into some really crazy shit that most people don't know about, I don't think. It's called silica nanotubes. And nanotubes are like, in this case, there's a lot of silica in the body. And there's actually a lot of exotic matter in the body. Now this is some really crazy shit. Like most people know about the electricity and stuff, but I'm going to contend that there's exotic forms of matter in the human body. And that's actually a key to the functioning of our nervous system. And some of these exotic states of matter function as superconductors, which is interesting at room temperature. So that's interesting. Now, a lot of people never talk about even the basic electricity of the body's functions, but it's, well, I mean, you have basic things like electroencephalogram, right? That's the brainwaves, commonly referred to as, you know, it's reading your brainwaves. And so that can tell a lot about the physiology and health of someone and the brain function, but it's very limited. They got this new shit, the squids, man. You're never going to believe the squids. Subquantum interference device, I think it's called. It's our subquantum. It measures very subtle functions of the human energy body. Maybe it's called a anyway, it's an interface device. Anyways, they've been working on these for a while. I'm gonna try and avoid it. But my point is, okay, so there's all kinds of these subtle phenomena in the body, and you can measure a lot of them. And even existing technology that's common can do so in a variety of ways. But okay, here's one thing to talk about right here. This is something subtle too that a lot of people don't talk about, and this is the function of a carrier wave. So let's say, okay, you have a periodistic phenomena in the body, like the heartbeat, right? So heartbeat, it's like a rhythm, systolic and diastolic rhythm, if you think about it that way. So it is a pulse, but if you visualize a pulse like a wave on the ocean, or a wave, more importantly, a wave inside a small pool, because it's like it bounces out and then it rebounds, and you have to account both for the cycle. So as we discussed, blood is a ferrofluid. So as it's pulsing through the body, it's having a wave pulse as well. In addition to the physical matter of the blood, you know, it also has an electrostatic pulse. And when you get into these wave phenomena like EMF, then you get what's called carrier waves. So when you superimpose two waves, if there's a wave with a longer wavelength, like, it's kind of subtle. Like, you have to be really looking for it to even see this other wave that's being carried. So let's say you have a primary wave, like the blood flow in the body, and you know, toroidal magnetic field that pulses with that. But then there's even another layer superimposed upon that. So it just functions as a carrier wave. Like, it's hard to explain to a common person. But let's just say once you get one wave pulsing, it's easy to piggyback others on top of it. And then they can have constructive and destructive interference. It's super complex. But anyway, let's just say that all these are key functions in the human body that are not commonly discussed. but that are known by some. And in fact, if you go back to Royal Reich and Wilhelm Reich and these different people, there's been, I think Michael Becker wrote the Bioelectricity. That guy did a groundbreaking study that made it to the mainstream kind of. And his second book, Crosscurrents, is also worth a look. And that book is all about how electronic devices interfere with that shit. And how it's not accident. Well, I don't know how much he talks about the industry and stuff behind it, but it's not an accident. Like, the people who know about this stuff have been using it to fuck you up for thousands of years. Okay, so now this gets us back to the second part of our topic. So we talked about human bioelectricity, right? And then unfortunately, this is a nasty topic that's about to come up right now because of all the politics and revelations and shit that's going on. But as I said before, as I've said to many people, I don't know if I've said it in these videos, but all human religions in the world for at least 5,000 years are sex cults. And that's plain and simple. Like, it's hard for people to understand. They think the opposite. But I mean, just look at what's going on in the Catholic Church right now. So first thing you got to understand is these are all mishmash. This is all religions are just a mishmash. Like, they steal other people's shit. It's kind of the same as industry is still to this day. They steal other people's shit. They change the names. They change the design like a tiny, tiny bit, almost imperceptibly, and they claim it as their own. And they also denounce the people who actually wrote it as murdering barbarians, which they were. But there's no difference. They stole their story. They stole their methodology. They stole everything about it. And I mean, most of the religions of Earth go back to Babylon. I mean, at least the big three murderous, evil ass religions that go around the world murdering all the non-believers. You know, what I call the cult of Babylon, and that's basically Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. It's all the cult of Babylon, but they won't admit it. And they actually try to claim they're different. That's funny. That's the funny part to me. You know, but they're actually all reading the same stuff. Okay, so let's add a layer to that. The Babylonians were extremely advanced mathematicians, and their astronomy was unbelievable. Like, if you take the common story that's taught in academia and look at what the Babylonians were able to accomplish with quote-unquote no telescopes and stuff. Look at it. I mean, the star list. I'm big into the stars. I read all these books about, you know, the Babylonian names of the constellations, because you see the Babylonians had these algorithmic and geometric tables. You know, they're like probably about over 5,000 years old, and they have extremely complex geometry and math. And one of the main things we know that they were into was stars and planets, tracking the motion of them. And so they built these ziggurats, and a ziggurat is in essence like it's an astronomical device, and all the different levels and the angles of the brickwork and masonry and stuff, it's an observational tool. So you measure the angle, you're measuring the position. And so that's how, okay, think about what we're taught about Babylonian society. Like, it's a fucking desert for the most part, right? So it's all about the water flow. And so it's about, well, also their symbol is the fish. I mean, I could go on and on about all that shit. But basically, have you ever seen Dune? Especially the Sci-Fi Channel one. That's going to help you understand. Because that movie is all about what I'm about to tell you. Which is how all the religions are based on a Middle Eastern sex cult. Not all the religions, but the big three, the biggest ones. And the Catholic Church, I don't even have to talk about. You know all that shit. But what I'm telling you, though, is these guys that people think are like, oh no, he's dishonoring everything. And I'm like, no, dude, that's the religion. That's what it is. He's doing it. You don't know. Your idea of what the religion is completely fucking nonsensical. Completely nonsensical, man. But it's all there. They're explaining to you everything about the current world system. Okay? And I've made extensive blogs and everything about how the United States is Babylon, and how they've iconographically used the religion and imagery of Babylon since day one. All those masons and shit. I mean, I could just go into all that shit. But ziggurats, pyramids, you know? This is what I'm saying. So think about it. If you were the class of people that knew how the stars move, you know, when the seasons happen, you know, when to this day, there's people in the U.S. government right now that do long-range weather forecasting, and they're fucking astrologers with big computers. That's all it is. I met one of these dudes, okay? And they had these titles, these Hebrew titles, right? For these dudes. They were called like Sedekiel the Third and some shit like that, which is the angelic spirit of Jupiter. So I'm telling you, these motherfuckers exist. There's wizards. There's literal wizards that work for the U.S. government on long-range weather forecasting. I'm not even shitting you. And they got real fancy computers and whatnot like that. But it's the same thing. But think about the power that confers. You ever see that movie Trading Places? So how Eddie Murphy becomes a bajillionaire and he bankrupts these two old dudes. So that movie's all about the crop forecast, right? So what I'm saying is, what if you could forecast bumper crops and fucking and blights and all that shit decades in advance minimum? There's people that can do that. Because, okay, so the weather systems are based on the sun. And the sun has its own cyclic patterns and all this different shit. Okay, but we're skewing off the topic. The point is, these Babylonians who had all this super duper science ran their society with a sex cult. Okay, the cult of Ishtar. Everyone's heard the phrase whore of Babylon. Well, for them, the whore was the goddess of the whole society. And the Ziggurat was a prostitution temple. And the fucking star bitches lived at the very top. And I'm trying to tell you this shit, man. I know it sounds crazy. What do you think the Statue of Liberty is, man? David Icke and all these people, they've all talked about this shit. I gotta give props to Jordan Maxwell. He brought this shit out way back. He cracked the nut on this thing. He knew a lot. He knew a lot early on. I don't endorse everything that dude says. He's not very detail oriented with some of his facts and stuff, but he's got the general gist of it pretty fucking solid, and he's good at communicating it. But anyways, the point is, if you look into this, and he said that what I'm saying too, I have to give him credit. Jordan Maxwell said the same shit, and I didn't believe him forever, and I just passed it over. But he said the same thing. All religions are sex cults. And I mean, that's why our society is how it is, because it's all completely repressed and hidden, and it's kept in the dark. And this is another thing I got to give credit to Wilhelm Reich. Like his book pretty much explains this all, how governments use that energy of humans as their power source. Okay, we got that movie Eyes Wide Shut by Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick was in it all. He was in that shit. He repented and realized how nasty it's like that Shining where he sees the old woman, and at first he thinks she's all sexy and he's trying to get into it, and then he realizes it's like a decaying ass corpse and she's laughing at him and shit like that, and it's like a ghost of something, you know, like he's trying to explain to you how this thing works, and he's trying to also tell his story as an individual. Like, he got into it and he was seduced by it. But what does he say in his final movie? He's basically telling you there's a class of super rich that own the police and the TV and the academia, and they own all that shit, and they're in a freaky sex cult. Now, this whole Hunter Biden thing, it's just like a speck. This shit is 5,000 years deep or more, and it's super fucking powerful. And the fact that it's coming out right now, and it's all about to hit, is gonna freak people out worldwide. But there's a certain segment of us that have already been awakening to all this process. And so we're here to help you guys. The ones who are freaked out and scared about it, it's like, we're here to help. And like, I'm bringing science, is what I'm trying to do, and explain to you how this energy works and how people use it. Okay, so one key topic is called pheromones. And these are aromatic, volatile compounds that are generated by the human body. And they're like a signaling mechanism, okay? They give all kinds of information, but they can kind of be biohacked. You can use these receptors and these things to, like, I'm trying to think of it, like a decoy. And this is a big science. And this also goes back probably 5,000 years. And it's the science of bewitching the human sensory system, mostly olfactory and gustatory, or taste, smell and taste, and aphrodisiacs, man, and stuff like that. But it's way deeper than that. So if you go read this guy, Agrippa. He'll tell you all about it. Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. He's got a huge book on the correspondences of all these planets and stuff like that. But anyway, the point I'm trying to say is humans have this potential sense to, I don't know, they pick up on the energy of each other. Okay, that's the best way to put it. And you can tell a lot about a person. And one of the key things you can tell is cortisol levels. And they tested all these different people to find out who had charisma and leadership power. And it's basically they kind of found some key elements to it were testosterone level and cortisol level. So if your testosterone's high and your cortisol is also really high, you're like a volatile, you're super high energy, but you're like volatile and you're always in kind of threat assessment mode. You know, you're always like almost like ready to fight for your life kind of level. You know what I mean? So it stresses you out. And so people pick up on any person that's stressed out. They pick up on their cortisol levels. So a person that has testosterone, so their body has that certain definition that you get, and you know, it's like an energy that's secreted by the body. That's the best way to put it. And like, if you have that, but your cortisol is super high, people don't trust you because they think you're scared, right? But if your cortisol levels are relatively low, then they're like, okay, this guy's chill. He's not all worked up and stuff. And he's strong. He feels confident, so he's not threatened. So these are two things that humans innately pick up on and sense as a sign of leadership. And that's just one example. There's all kinds of aspects to this. But imagine there's a 5,000-year-old science of bewitching people's desire and their visuals and everything, their taste. And if you can control many aspects of their environment, you can use that to herd them around. You know, they use this all the time, like hunters and different people use all this shit. This scent, you know, the scent of the hunt or whatever it is. They use it to fucking yank people's chain and steer society. And so when you feel yourself engaging in all these consumer activities and whatnot, and getting compelled in this way by this like grotesque, delusional materialism, you know, because all matter is impermanent. And the thing is, whatever matter flows through you, exactly that. It comes in and it goes out. It arises and it ceases. And if you're trying to cling to it and hold it together, it's always gonna suck for you. That's why you have to shift it over into like the energetic concept. And so that's my purpose with the bioenergy, bioelectricity video, is to get people to understand that, how it's used, how it's manipulated, and how if you understand it, you can perfect your own health. So that's today's video, Human Bioelectricity Part 2.